Well, good afternoon, everybody. Before I even start the presentation, I just wanted to say how in awe I am and how much I acknowledge everyone who's a non-native speaker of English today giving their presentations and talks in English. If I had to do something in another language, I have no idea how I'd do it. So I'm in awe. Thank you. So I've called this talk Stronger Together, the power of networks for positive environmental action. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the organisation that I work in, the Manchester International Festival. You just saw a video there of our last festival last year. Talk about the networks that we're members of, the benefits that brings for us, and why I think they're a positive thing. Because I'm a really strong believer in collective action and working together to make changes. And I think that by coming together and sharing our stories and experience, we can inspire each other to make changes. And that's what I'd really like to convey to you, like what your power is as part of a network and how we can do that. And before I get into the slides, I also want to really make the point that it's so important that environmental sustainability is linked with the other elements of sustainable development, economic sustainability and social equity and fairness. And by linking all three of them together, that's when we make really positive, impactful changes in the world. So I'll just get into my slides now. So here, we just had a small video of Manchester International Festival, which took place in 2021. The festival's been happening every 2 years since 2007 in Manchester in the north of England across 18 days. And the festival is only ever of newly commissioned work, so work that's never been seen anywhere else, and sometimes is only ever happening in that festival. And that can create sometimes some challenges for environmental sustainability. So if something is completely new, how do you know what the impact of it's going to be? How would you measure the impact of it? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be putting them across. And actually what I've put on here are some of the things we managed to achieve in terms of environmental sustainability in the festival last year. So you can see there, some of the things that we did. Big Ben lying down with political books was a big sculpture that was in the middle of the city, a sort of half-size replica of Big Ben, which you probably know from London, covered in political books, which were then donated to people at the end of the festival. And I did quite a lot of research with the producer for that, and we made a connection with a plastics manufacturer who donated all the material for it, so 30% recycled plastics, and then they collected that for recycling afterwards. And we had a sign next to the sculpture explaining to the audience that this is where the plastic had come from and this is where it was going to. So we used this sculpture as a way of educating people around sustainability. But a lot of the things that we managed to achieve in the festival last year were around materials consumption and waste. And I started at the festival with the organisation probably about 6 months or so before the festival started. So that's where I put our energy and what we focused on. But actually another thing I want to get across, as well as the power of networks, is that for an artistic thing to be truly sustainable, you have to be thinking about these things from the beginning of the process. Unless you're thinking about sustainability from when you're starting out with your concepts and ideas, it will always be an afterthought. It will always be something you're trying to catch up with yourself and deal with things at the end rather than building it in from the start. And this is an image of where MIF is moving to. We're moving into a new permanent home next year. It's called The Factory, and it's in the city centre in Manchester, and we'll have 3 performance spaces. But actually what I really want to focus on for this slide is the vision statement that we have for the factory. It's the place where we invent tomorrow together. And for me, that really speaks to ideas around climate justice and how we will work together. Because actually, if we want to create a world built on climate justice, we need our invention. We need to find new ways of putting things together. And we also have to rediscover some of the old ways of doing things. We were talking last night about how people are excited in the UK about having their milk delivered in glass bottles, which are then reusable. And it's like, that's how our grandparents did it. So, what can we bring from the past and bring into the future? The idea of tomorrow, obviously, that's looking towards a future of based on climate justice for me. Like, what does the world look like when we're making it suitable for everyone, when we're making sure that everyone has a voice in it? And then that idea of together. Somebody once said to me that this is a vision statement, has an implicit invitation in it. It's like, we can't do this on our own. We need your contribution to make it happen. And for me, that's really important in terms of environmental sustainability. Not one person, not one organisation, not one sector has all of the answers. Everybody has to contribute what they can and where their area of knowledge is so that we can make progress together, so we can invent tomorrow together. So here's some of the networks that we're part of. the Theatre Green Book is what built the connection between myself and Tartu 24, as Angela reached out to the Green Book network and asked if someone could come and talk about that. And it was a sort of collaborative resource that was developed over lockdown. You can see a quote there from Julie's Bicycle, obviously the sector leaders in this, from 2020, sort of taking that opportunity from the crisis of the pandemic to really sit and reflect and think about how do we make theatre, how can we make it in a way that suits the future that we want to build. And so there's 3 volumes of the Green Book: productions, buildings and operations. And it provides a framework and standards that people can work to for any aspects of theatre making. And it's backed up by work from Bureau Happold, the international engineering consultancy. So it provides a framework, it provides standards, ways you can sort of inspire your thinking about the work that you're doing. And another thing that I really like about the Theatre Green Book is that it tells you who's responsible for which bit of sustainability in part of things. So it's not just one person's responsibility. It might sound ironic for a sustainability manager to be saying that not one person is responsible for it, but that's the case. It's like, I can oversee the process, but everybody has their part to play. The technical manager, the designer, the stage technician, everybody has something to contribute. And the Green Book is a way of, demonstrating that in a very accessible way. And now here's another network that we are part of. So I'm always networked in lots of different places. And I'm interested to bring this to Tartu and to share it with you. So GMAST started as the Manchester Arts Sustainability Team about 10 years ago. People working in cultural and art organisations in the city who are interested in sustainability or had it as part of their job role, starting to come together to talk about what they could share and learn from each other, what resources they could develop and how we could all progress. And so GMAST has grown over the years, and it's now about 60 organisations across Greater Manchester, ranging in size from very small community-based organisations of maybe 1 or 2 people up to the BBC, who have a big office in there. And there's something about the diversity and the strength that comes from that we're all facing similar challenges in our organisations, and we can share our solutions in different settings and share our knowledge. And what's great about GMAST as well is that it's by being a place-based network. We're in Greater Manchester, and we have connections with the city municipalities and the regional municipalities. And we're making the case for how culture can contribute to the climate strategies and the targets. So Greater Manchester has set a target of being carbon neutral by 2038, and we're making the case for how culture will be contributing to that. And we're also exploring the intersections between different regional policies, between climate policies, health and well-being, community cohesion and culture, and looking at the role that cultural organisations can play in that and the way that we stand in our societies. And through a European-funded project, back in the days when British organisations could be part of them, GMAST did this project called Sea Change, where we shared the model that had been developed in Manchester with 6 cities across Europe. And one of the tools that we developed in that was this thing, which is basically, it's a tool to help cultural organisations develop climate action plans. So the P's in the middle there are sort of areas that you might want to consider in a climate action plan. And then the I's around the outside, haven't got a better way of putting it, are kind of the exciting things that culture can bring to that. So it's not just a dry kind of policy document, but thinking about the ways that cultural organisations can really enliven things around climate planning. And GMAST has gone on to inspire other regional networks in the UK. So Shift is over in Liverpool, which is a city very close to Manchester on the coast. And then over in Leeds, on the other side of the Pennines, there's an organisation called Sail. They called it Sail because we were mast and, the boat goes long. And so Sail have developed this net zero carbon roadmap for the cultural sector of their city. So how everyone in the cultural sector can contribute towards becoming zero carbon in that time. So that's, where the power of a network comes from encouraging each other to take action, from inspiring each other, sharing resources, but also working collectively, working towards a goal that we can all see and see our role in reaching. And then the final network that I want to mention, I don't have a photo for it, but I just thought this idea of a mandala really spoke to me, because this last network that I'm part of, it's a network of organisations that are networked into different areas of the country and different art forms and things, but we're all organisations that create work in public spaces, in other people's venues and different things. in different spaces. So for me, it's about the idea of how information and knowledge can travel between networks and how things can become relevant or interesting in their different areas. And through this network, I was speaking with a colleague who is head of production in a festival that happens in Norwich in the east of England. And they're doing a project there around installing grid power. It was mentioned in the small film that they're like trying to get rid of diesel generators so that their outdoor events aren't using a non-renewable source, but they're using the grid power. And so inspired by that, we started having conversations in Manchester about why can't this happen in Manchester? And then there's people who are part of this network who are in Brighton and Cheltenham and things. I can see I've run out of time, so I'm just going to click into my last image here, which is what I want to leave you with. It's an image from MIF 17. It was a show called What is the City But the People? And a catwalk was put, it's actually the same place that Big Ben was in MIF 21. And the people who walked that catwalk were people of Manchester representing themselves. And What is the City But the People is now touring internationally, but as a concept. So none of the things in the picture, none of the stage or anything like that is touring, but it's still What is the City But the People. It's been in Munich, and we're in conversations for it to happen in other places. So I really like that idea about ideas traveling to different places and opening up and connecting with networks in there. So I'll just leave you with what's my call for action, which is I'd really invite each of you to think about the networks that you're already part of, the conversations that you could be having about environmental sustainability, understanding what's in your control and how you can make the changes to make a positive change in the world, and also where you can influence, where you can have conversations and nudge. And also, you never know where a conversation's going to go, so it's always worth having a conversation. Thank you for listening.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And dear audience, also here and online, please, Feimatta and all the other guests are waiting for your questions, and you can ask those questions using Slido website. Just enter Kultuurikompass and post your questions, and so we can ask some here. And I have a question for you as well.
Okay.
So, in your opinion, if you would like to give suggestions to our listeners and Estonian culture managers here, would it be wise to start a new network focusing on environmentally friendly culture management, or incorporate an environmentally friendly way of thinking already in existing network?
I think build from what you have. Because actually the thing of, I know it's probably the same in Estonia as it is in the UK. Everybody is busy. Everybody has sort of pressures on their time. If there are networks that are already existing, that are healthy, that people are contributing to, and it's possible to add sustainability into that, I think for me, that's probably where I would start from. I think we can sometimes get sort of lost in the excitement of new, setting up something new, but is that actually the most sustainable thing to do? Not always, So it's nice, like maybe in the Theatre Green Book, it talks about making sure sustainability is on the agenda at every meeting you have. So maybe that's a way of doing it, rather than saying, okay, now we have to spend more time over here. So I think that would be my answer.
Thank you. I will continue with networks and your experience. We saw that you're part of many of them or have participated. So what is, I think, 3 things you have learned from your experiences with being in network?
Is that actually it's by having the conversations that you find the answers. It's like it's. You could say actually there's lots of resources. Elsa was mentioning before. There's loads of things out there, but for me, it's by talking to people that you go, oh, okay, now I see how I can do that in my world, in my practice. So conversations. Anybody and almost any experience is expertise, if that makes sense. That finding out that, oh, that's how you make the boiler work. Oh, because you've done it in your building. That experience is expertise, I think, is really important. And how important it is to celebrate your successes and other people's successes, because that's what encourages you to take the next step, isn't it? I think it was Marlena was talking about, you don't beat people with the regulations, you encourage them and say, we're doing this together. And I think those are my main 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.